Assalamualaikum and Selamat Hari Raya to everyone watching today. Hi, I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Hafiz Marzukhi.
You're watching Lebaran AWANI and today we want to make it a day of merriment and a joyous occasion as you are with your family. Hopefully there's something cooking in the kitchen for tomorrow.
Obviously, I mean that's what we all look forward to. And please do stay tuned with us because this is only the first day of a 3-day special Hari Raya series by Astro AWANI, which kicks off 8:30 p.m., which is the Bahasa Malaysia edition, and we have the 10 p.m. edition, which is in English. And please stay tuned as we have arranged a lineup of guests to talk about all things Raya. And with us tonight to start things off. We have the one and only Sharifah Amani.
Hello.
Hello. I would say you do not need any introduction.
Needs no introduction.
She's an
I
actress.
hope in a good way.
She's an actress, a film director, a screenwriter. Of course, when you talk about the famous roles she's known for, of course, the first thing that comes to mind is Orchid.
That's right.
Yes. Sepet. Believe it or not, it's in 2004.
Yeah.
Has it been that long? Okay,
yes, it has.
So Amani, is it famous or is it infamous?
What? Orchid or the film itself? Me? I don't know. Some people say sendu. I also accept that. It's okay. No. Because in this day and age, it's not really great to be in the forefront. So to be chilled out, to be like at home, to be doing your own thing, minding your own business is great as well.
But that's not the Raya spirit, right? Because
Raya is with family, different.
Okay, hype. Raya can be hype.
Yes.
Is Raya always hyped up for you? Do you get excited for it?
Honestly, with my family, it is very much Ramadan. Ramadan is when Papa wants his girls at home and everybody's cooking and sharing recipes, and which is quite rare for his girls because we're always like filming or doing work or writing or something, travelling lah. Ada saja anak Pak Syed. But when it comes to Raya, I think it's more chill out. So the kemenangan is felt, insyaAllah, that we've done our tarawih, we've done our puasa, hopefully our ibadah is accepted, insyaAllah. So yeah, we just want to have fun and hang out.
When we talk about traditions, of course, things have changed ever since the pandemic, right? And this, I think, is the first year where it's back to the usual all gung-ho before Raya. How has it been for you this year specifically?
This year, actually, is much more meaning. It's very meaning.
And that's why we've asked.
Alhamdulillah, it finally happened. The girl who was forever single is now married, Alhamdulillah, to a very nice person. It's a very sweet man, and one of the best in-laws that I can ever hope for, and I'm spending it with them.
Okay, so how are you going to split the time?
We geng KL.
Oh, okay.
We geng Raya KL. Alhamdulillah, jodoh Allah tak salah. Alhamdulillah, right? Yeah, so he's from KL.
Okay.
And I'm a city girl as well, so there's no like balik kampung, rumah you ke, rumah I ke, mama you ke, tak. But we will be spending at Ibu's house first. So it's very exciting. I've never done that.
But interesting thing about the first time spending Raya as a married couple is finding the differences and the similarities.
Okay.
What are the differences and what are the similarities?
I don't know. My family is really laid back. My
chill.
family is really, really chill. So I think it's my dad who gets up and like, "Hey, bangkit lah semua." And then we start to get together and everything. But the night before is exciting because my sisters and I would do our famous family punya ayam golek. So it is Tok punya papa's mom's recipe, handed down, turun-temurun to the daughter-in-laws and the cucus and all that. So we do that lah. So yeah.
Oh, lovely. We're actually going to be talking to a food historian after this to talk a little bit about, again, preserving some of those wonderful recipes and heritage. In every family has one recipe.
At least
I
one.
agree.
Yeah, at least one.
This is our family.
So is your in-laws family, is that a big family? Is it meriah tak?
It can be meriah kalau involve cousins and so on.
Extended family.
Yes, but with our family, it's nice. It's just us as well.
Okay.
But then we're going to visit after that lah. Yes.
So I would assume that esok pagi raya ayam golek comes out on the table.
Yes, hopefully. And so the interesting bit is that we will try each other punya. taste.
Sample.
So because macam mana pun air tangan would be different, right? So my cousins is different, and then Kak Leah punya might be different. Yana is not goleking this year because she's pantang. She's
in confinement.
in confinement. So yeah,
Congrats,
baby girl.
congrats.
Thank
As a
you.
little one in the family.
Yes, another one.
Another little
Alhamdulillah.
one. Are you also big on the baju raya? You
Baju
do that?
raya sometimes
Okay.
because being an actor in Malaysia, sometimes
Okay.
budget is not there. So when we do have the chance to go out, and I think previously Lana got husband different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually thought about it.
So don ta? Are you gonna match?
Yeah,
Maybe.
maybe. I used to find it's amazing how things just change, kan?
Yeah,
Because I
yeah,
used to find it so annoying that people did that.
Yeah,
and
me
then
too.
then
Me
the
too.
moment kahwin and then
Yeah.
got boyfriend or whatever.
Suddenly it makes sense,
And then
right?
it's like,
It makes sense to look
It's about
be
being
in
on the
uniform.
same team,
I
right? It's the
know,
uniform
I
of the
know.
same team.
So yes, let's say yes. I want to
Okay.
sedondon. I will sedondon.
I will be looking forward to
Yeah.
tomorrow morning's photo. See
Right.
that sedondon. We also actually this year for Astro for AWANI, there's a theme for this year, which is bukalah hati. if you can-
Open your
Seriously.
heart.
Which I really love that. Especially because recently I've been feeling, I don't know about you, but I feel like we've been so insular lately.
I think so.
Inside ourselves, even though
Especially
we're right
with
here.
pandemic, right?
But also
even more isolated.
We may be living side by side or with in a community, but we're actually quite
In our own bubbles.
in our own little bubbles. And I
In our
like
own.
the idea of opening it up just a little bit to just share
Yeah.
and to be curious and to be empathetic. What does bukalah hati mean for you?
Oh, it's really sweet, and it's like opening your heart to many things. They're good and bad about it lah. But for me, I've never seen a bad. If you truly open your heart with good intentions, inshallah, the only things that penetrate are the good. When you travel as well, you go with an open heart, open mind, right? You terima, you accept, and you learn so much about yourself during that process as well. I think as an actor, as a person especially, when you're vulnerable, when you allow other people to see your weaknesses, the cacat cela, kat situlah orang akan sayang awak lagi banyak. Kat situ.
That feels really personal. Are you speaking from like a
yeah.
really vulnerable place?
Oh, I don't know where else
What
to
is
speak
vulnerable?
from. This is what I do for a living. I tend to just speak like this. But yeah, that's how I am. I mean, I'm not a perfect person. I don't think anyone is. I don't think God made us that way. That we have our own journeys we are supposed to learn. And to buka our hati, to be inclusive, to be diverse, to be accepting, to celebrate our differences. Benda macam tu yang penting.
Betul.
Benda macam tu that will carry us longer. And I feel the same way you do. Lately it's been a bit suffocating. It's been a bit macam geng ni, geng tu, geng ni, geng tu.
Yeah.
I was like, kita tak ada geng, guys.
It does.
Kita satu je, guys.
It feels like we are so aware of the differences of
Betul.
the other.
Tapi persamaan tu kita tak nampak.
Tak nampak, yeah.
We go out of our way to find dissimilarities, right? And that's the problem. But what do you see bukalah hati in terms of the community? What can the community or the society learn from this particular?
Yeah, we could all do with a little bit more, right?
I'm sure, and I see it every day actually. Tau. Sebenarnya, kadang-kadang I don't know whether it's social media or because it's just in our face all the time, the negativity, right? And because this group wants to win this argument, that group wants to win that argument. So then tak tahu, I don't know if it's real or not. So what I like to do is on Sundays go for banana leaf lunch and everybody is there. Indian, Chinese, Malay, everybody and everybody just wants
all
to
enjoy banana leaf.
Exactly, and very sweet. Like wait until orang makan. Okay, this table free.
My goodness.
And it's a communal thing.
You're not the type to hover over somebody's table, are you?
No,
Because you
I-
might have hovered over my table.
I will not hover. Unless I have my 80-something-year-old grandmother with me and you're having your third drink.
Like, cepat.
Yes.
Tengah sembang.
Or I would go very nicely. Ni lama lagi ke? And then if it is lama, I cakap, oh, so sorry and then I go off lah.
I would definitely leave my table for Sharifah Amani.
So would I. So would I. I would definitely leave my table for you. So we're going to come back and continue our conversation with Sharifah Amani after these messages. So stay with us on Lebaran Awani.
Selamat Hari Raya Maaf Zahir Batin. Yang jauh kita dekatkan, yang dekat kita rapatkan. Lupakan segala kisah silam, kita bermaaf-maafan sesama kita untuk Hari Raya Aidilfitri dan kita mulakan buku baharu dan juga kehidupan baru. Semoga anda semua berada dalam keadaan yang sihat, sejahtera dan sentiasa memandu dalam keadaan yang berhati-hati ketika mana jumlah trafik di jalan raya meningkat dengan mendadak sekali. Periksa kenderaan sebelum mulakan perjalanan dan rancang perjalanan anda sebaik mungkin untuk keselesaan dan juga keselamatan anda dan juga keluarga tersayang.
Welcome back. You're watching Lebaran Awani with me, Hafiz, Marzukhi, and
Me, Melisa, Idris.
And we're still continuing our conversation with the one and only Sharifah Amani.
Me, Sharifah Amani.
What are you up to nowadays? What's going
Yeah.
on? What are you working
What's the latest?
What's the latest? Latest is, well, not so latest like actually. Last year, I was just calculating balik. Last year, I think a week or 2 weeks after my wedding, I filmed a feature film called La Luna. It's directed by Raihan. So it's a
It's a collab, right? Between Singapore and Malaysia.
Singapore and Malaysia. I think we shot in Kuala Kangsar. It is. It is. I should tell you a little bit lah, okay?
Don't spoil it too much.
Don't.
Just
But
enough
I
to
tell
tease.
you, it's tease only.
Yeah.
So the story is basically a city girl that goes into a somewhat conservative village and sells lingerie.
Oh,
I'm
you're the
sorry,
one doing.
what?
You're the one who's selling the. Oh, okay.
Okay,
Interesting.
who's buying the lingerie?
That's
That's the
the
story.
Best. That's the best.
What an interesting premise.
and that's it.
So is drama comedy?
Yeah.
What's the tone?
I would say drama comedy boleh. There,
Okay.
because I think when you're talking about serious things,
Yeah.
I think we should have a laugh about it as well. We shouldn't take things too seriously.
So this is going to be a cinematic release?
Inshallah, but they want to take it through the festival routes first and then probably coming back here. Kalau Malaysia terima lah.
Oh, faham. I mean,
Inshallah.
there's been quite a lot of controversy with the
Films.
film industry. How do you,
Yeah.
as a practitioner, as someone who's invested
Yeah.
in seeing this industry
Flourish.
flourish, like how do you deal with when you hear that your peers?
It's heartbreaking.
Okay.
It's heartbreaking. It's really traumatic as well, especially when it's violent. Because we're artists, we're not really trying to make
Win
people.
an election.
Thank you for saying it. Bless you. Bless you. We're
Sorry,
not
just came
no,
to me.
just do it. Just do a Nani, man. Nani, Sharifah Amani does that all the time. Do it. No, but it's that, right? We're not trying to win sides. We're not trying to like change minds and infiltrate the. No, not really. Because everyone out there is an adult, and we understand that if you're a Spider-Man and you can shoot spiders, it's a film. So I think with other things also, we can also understand that it's a film. It's a character in a film, and
Right.
that's about it.
How do you pick your projects? Because some projects have the possibility of offending people. We've seen that, right? Like not everyone.
Arwah
not everyone
Yasmin's
will
films.
suka.
Arwah Yasmin's films were famous for
Right.
that. We're famous for that. I mean, when I shaved my head bald,
Yeah.
I wasn't very accepted. But I had a lot of support from people who loved me and who cared for me. And I have to tell this story because shaving my head for my craft was at the point where I finally realized and I was finally brave enough to call myself an actor. Before that, I tak panggil, I never called myself an actor. I felt that I had to sacrifice a bit of myself to be able to call myself that. So when I finally shaved my head and I felt that after all the kecaman on front page and stuff like that, I felt, yes, you can call yourself an actor. At that point, but then I would think that nobody's going to marry me, right? Because the in-laws would have a problem with it. But my husband's grandmother, and she's in her 90s, and when they told her that my husband was getting married to me, she's really senior, right? And she was unwell at that time. She was in the hospital, and she just reacted, "Oh, budak yang botak tu."
Wow.
And I was like,
that was way in 2006.
Thank you. And I was like, oh, Habila, one knows me as that. And it's like, no, that girl is very good because she commits to her work.
Oh, that's really lovely.
I mean, the principle behind it.
Do you understand? But also she's from Negeri Sembilan lah. So adat pepatih is like, girls all the way, right?
Matriarchy rules. So in the spirit of kind of reflecting and looking back, what did that kecaman, what was that rooted in? What did that teach you about the way we kecam women or professionals who invest in their craft?
I think the education in arts and comprehension is not there. I don't think so. I don't think that people they want to be outwardly sexist or racist, but the education is lacking lah. As to how you approach things that make you uncomfortable. How do you address things that you rasa tak selesa? So if you're angry about something, how do you channel that? How do you talk about it? How do we communicate? Through communicating, we can bring each other closer. Tak kenal maka tak cinta. So that's why we have to get to know each other and we have to break those bubbles.
But I think early...
And we have to invest in the arts. Because if you don't invest in the arts, these things don't work out.
She's gone straight to
she's gone straight to
camera.
But it's really different, right? In early 2000 or mid 2000 compared to now, right? The society has, I would say, somehow evolved.
I think so, very much, especially our audience.
Yeah, and also I think the taste in films, of course, streaming, Astro, Netflix, and everything, of course, exposes us. How do you see that change, or how does it seep through our local industry?
I'm very, very happy actually because the films that we used to make didn't get as much attention dulu because I think we weren't exposed to things like that. With the OTT platforms, Netflix, HBO, Hulu, macam-macam lah, macam-macam. So all these kind of things are out there. So our audience are already exposed to so much, whether they like to admit it or not. So they're already exposed to so much. So they are aware of these things.
All kinds of things.
All kinds of things. So I think the majority, or there's a bigger portion of the younger community where they challenge us now as local makers to write something better, to get something new out there. Project High Council, Imaginor, right? These films, this drama series and these films, One Cent Thief, all these things that they're just coming out with more interesting storytelling, interesting casting.
Interesting premises as
so
well.
There's so much. And to be accepted. Bukan kita tak ada. We've always had that. It's just that we didn't have an audience that would accept us. That's why we had to kind of travel the film circuits to kind of like jumpa orang like-minded. But because now, I mean, they are amazing. Our young people are amazing human beings, and they have been exposed dari lahir already got internet. We lifestyle have internet.
Jaring.
Angkat handphone, angkat phone, finish.
Okay, I guess we're in the same.
Okay, so are you going to be the next Malaysian to win an Oscar?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
I
mean, inshallah. I don't know. I mean, exactly. I wish so much for Malaysia because I know my peers. I've seen my seniors work and fight. I see the young ones here work and fight, And we're amazing people. We're amazing practitioners. You talk about crew that learn from themselves, like everything can ad hoc. Because we don't have much support. When you don't have much support, when you don't have money, when you don't have much love and care, you tend to you lean on each other and band together and do the best. So I think yes, boleh. Tapi dengan support government, with the support and the invest, when you invest in the arts, when you invest in the people who voted for you, at the end of the day, inshallah, we can through the arts we can get empathy, we can learn comprehension, and all these things that are forced to us, to divide us, inshallah, it will go away.
Right.
Yeah, but I truly believe in education through the arts.
Definitely. Okay, so on that note, we want to thank you for
Thank you very much.
celebrating your Malam Raya with us. We really appreciate
It's my
your
pleasure.
time.
AWANI has always been kind to me and my family. And you guys do amazing work. So thank you very much.
Are always a welcome guest.
Yes, always.
Always. The standing invitation for Sharifah Amani on AWANI. So from films, let's pivot to food, where I earlier today spoke to a food historian, Ahmad Najib Ariffin, or he's more affectionately known as Naj, and he calls himself a gastropologist, which is an amalgamation of gastronomy and anthropologist. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of the food that we traditionally eat during Raya and how it brings families and communities together.
Very interesting conversation.
Let's go to Naj. Hi Naj, thank you so much for joining me today. Selamat Hari Raya to you.
Selamat Hari Raya, Melisa.
I'm so glad that you came. You look very festive. And
Wonderful.
thank you for spending some time with me today.
Most welcome.
So you and I had initially done an interview together last year, also for Raya, and I remembered in that interview, I had such a wonderful time with you learning about food culture and our traditions, and you've done a lot of research in this area. And I kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about that because Raya, although a very religious holiday, is surrounded with food and love and celebration. Talk to me a little bit, Naj, about how important food is in the Malaysian Muslim culture, especially during Aidilfitri celebrations. What is the role of food in bringing together families and communities during festive seasons like this?
Well, like in most celebrations of every kind, whether religious or cultural, ethnic, and so on, food will eventually take a center stage. And it becomes something that brings people together in a way that just talking or just looking at each other will not do. And because it's the idea of nourishment. And now, the thing about Hari Raya, especially Hari Raya Puasa, Hari Raya Aidilfitri, is that it comes after a month of fasting. And that makes it more special than any other religious festivity where there's food obviously involved. Because the Muslims have been fasting for 30 days, for a month, and that success is something that is an inner pride of each person of fulfillment of an obligation. And so when Hari Raya comes, it's a bit like a show that you have fulfilled that obligation through eating food during the daytime.
It's the celebration of a victory,
a
personal
victory.
Yes. What about you? Do you have some kind of Raya traditions and customs? Are there personal favorite dishes that you and your family often do every year?
Well, like most people, the best thing about Hari Raya is just to be with the family. And having said that, of course, there are many. I remember we had so many frontliners during COVID-19 and all that. And even during non-COVID, normal times, there are people who have to be elsewhere to do their tugas, their duties. And so they can't be with their families. So I remember them because this is something that you're asking it on a more personal basis. I almost died of COVID-19.
Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know.
Well,
when did you contract
that
COVID?
was in 2021, November.
Okay.
And so I witnessed the frontliners, how difficult that they had to do their job in the hospitals. They had to go around with full PPEs and everything. And it always stuck to me, you know. So with that, I always remember the frontliners. And that's why I'm saying that while we normal people can be with our families, but we need to remember that some people, because of the duties that they have to do, they can't. But that is an important part of Hari Raya, of Idul Fitri, where it is to be with your family, especially with your parents if they are still around. And that's the whole reason why we have Balik Kampung. Now, I'm quite lucky because my own parents are in the KL or Klang Valley area.
So you got to see them during
I get to see them
MCO, COVID
yes,
times?
I got to see them when it was permissible to do so. And the thing is that we need to, even if we can't meet them personally because of either duties or because they are in the kampung and we are not able to go back for any reason, we should make an effort to call them, and now we have video call and all that. So that's something that
no
we
excuse,
need to do.
right?
No
Technology
excuse.
can facilitate the connection. Naj, thank you so much for sharing that with me. I feel very touched by that story. I'm so glad that you're here today with us. Has that experience shaped the way and the intersection between your work of research in food, in history and culture, has that changed the way you view life and culture and our appreciation of the daily?
I have to admit that the only thing that it changed me is just to make me appreciate much more the life that has been given to me, you could say the extension, because I was basically dead for 4 days and on ventilator. If they took the ventilator off, I would be dead. And so that part is something that really hit me, the gift of the extension of life. But in terms of work, it's all fine. I was happy to continue doing the work that I love, the research, the sharing of knowledge, and the traveling to get more knowledge and to be able to share more, and that includes food as well.
We're going to take a quick break, Naj. We'll come back and continue this conversation. Stay with us right here on Lebaran Awani. We'll be right back. Hi, welcome back to Lebaran Awani with me, Melisa. Idris, Selamat Hari Raya to everyone who's watching tonight. Let's continue my conversation with Ahmad Najib Ariffin, affectionately known as Naj. He is the founder of Nusantara Academy of Development, Geocultures and Ethno-Linguistics. That's quite a mouthful. He describes himself as a gastropologist, which is an amalgamation of gastronomy and anthropology. So looking at food and how it intersects with history and culture. So Hari Raya food, or food traditionally associated with Hari Raya. What have you learned about the origins and the history of why we have come to associate certain foods with Hari Raya?
Okay, now the first thing that we need to remember about Hari Raya food, meaning mostly Malay food, is that the Malay origin or Malay culture and so on is not something that is just limited to Malaysia. Malaysia or Indonesia, Singapore, Philippines, most of these countries are all, unfortunately, historically artificial constructs that were bestowed to us by the colonials.
Okay.
And before that, we were a much closer, much more widespread entity with very good relations among all of us, whether it's Malaysian, Indonesian, Singaporean. We didn't have those nationalistic distinctions. And so we were able to take all these various foods from each other, bring them from one place to another, and then they would change a little bit. The taste would evolve from one place to another place because of the local requirements or local availability of ingredients and so on and so forth. And so for Hari Raya, it was the same thing. It was whatever was available in those days. And in those days, things were not as, ingredients were not as available easily as they are in modern times, like today, where you can just, put things on a truck and send them all over the country. In those days, people actually made their own ingredients.
Right.
So that's where you have the distinctive foods, even like whether it's ketupat, rendang and all, even rendang, there are so many different tastes of rendang. The name is the same, but different places and different chefs, different cooks have their own little differences that make it so special for each.
I remember the last time we spoke, you talked about how difficult some ingredients were to make, things that we take for granted today, like sugar.
Like sugar, yes.
I think about that frequently now. Every time I go and get some sugar for my coffee, I think, well, in the olden days, sugar is really hard to come by.
Exactly.
Talk to me a little bit about how food preparation and the convenience of ingredients nowadays has changed our palate, has changed our preference for food. Simple things like kuih raya, it's changed so much from before.
Yes. Now, I give you a very quick example of my own beloved father-in-law. He told me about how when he was young, and this was like maybe 1930s, 1940s, in which as a young boy, his task was to make the sugar for the family. And so, he would get the tebu, the sugar cane or whatever it was. There are various types of sugar, as you know. So he would be tasked with, doing all the things necessary, having to chop up the pieces, having to manually mash them up, having to boil it all, and then dry it up. So I remember that, and like you said, it's good if we remember that food is not so easy as it is now,
Right.
Because then we will appreciate the food that we eat more. And so the changes include that, as I mentioned in our first conversation, which I think is very important to repeat, the traditional foods were not so sweet as they are today for two reasons. One is already I mentioned, because sugar, for example, was much more difficult. So people used them sparingly, just enough to give that light sweetness. It was not meant to be totally sweet, like many foods are today, or many snacks are today. And that's where the term secukup rasa came about. Now, the other thing is the competition with foreign foods, such as cakes, donuts, which are sweet. And to be very honest, it's not healthy to continuously consume such sugar-laden foods. Right. We should go back to those kuih-kuih or kuih-muih that were done with just secukup rasa, but the other ingredients should be given center stage, such as if it was pulut and santan, then get that pulut and santan taste over the sugar. If it was a bit of gula melaka, then taste that the gula melaka a little bit. It doesn't have to be so sweet. That means some kuih makers today, in addition to the gula melaka taste, they add in more artificial sugar,
right,
to make it more attractively sweet, which is not necessary.
So we
should
masking
understand that.
the original taste,
Yes.
the lemak manis.
The lemak manis, or the pandan, or kacang, the taste of the kacang. It doesn't have to be. There are some kuih which use kacang as a main ingredient, and today some of them make it so sweet that the kacang taste is drowned. It's just the sweetness, but actually that kacang within the whole kuih should take center stage.
Right. Is there anything being done to kind of preserve this type of how do you say, commitment or the fact that the authenticity of those flavors? Are we doing enough to preserve this really wonderful culinary heritage that we have?
Well, in a way, yes and no. Things like our conversation, like also we had before, a lot of people watched that and said, oh yeah, that's true. They didn't realize it. So it's good that we have this kind of ongoing conversation to help people remember and realize that we we have our own culinary heritage. We don't have to follow the sweetness of Western snacks and Western cakes, Western donuts, and so on.
What do you think can make our flavors and our heritage more accessible? So you talked a bit about how we've imported a lot of these Western flavors and the palette of the sweet, extreme sweet and fried. What can we do to export our heritage, our pandan flavors, which is now a superfood,
It's a
isn't
superfood,
it?
yes.
Our pandan flavors, our lemak santan, and all the flavors that you talked about. What can we do more to export that?
That's a very good question, because I want to emphasize that we should not wait for other people to do it. We should not rely or depend on other people to do it. Each one of us should be that ambassador of our food, our Malaysian culture, and our the wonderful things that we have in our Malaysian milieu, to be able to show to the world, this is what we have. You know, we don't need to follow others anymore. We can contribute to the world of culinary heritage.
Amazing. Naj, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. You've inspired me to go back and ask all my aunties and mother and grandmother for their recipes, to make sure that I pass that along and preserve that food heritage of my family.
Yes.
Thank you for being with me on the show today. I appreciate
Most
your time.
welcome. Happy to be here.
That was Melisa's conversation with Ahmad Najib Ariffin, a gastropologist. I find it so interesting with all the things that he brought up, and especially about preserved recipes, you know. Even it made me think, I need to get that recipe from my grandma.
Is there, so every family has at least one recipe that they pass down? What's the recipe in your family?
So in my family, it's this dish called baktum, which is a bit tomato broth based, a bit like goulash. I don't have Hungarian blood.
I have never heard of it.
Believe it, I googled it after listening to the interview. I could not find its origins. I got to find that recipe after this.
Maybe it's actually original, like the Hafiz Marzukhi family originated that.
I'm not really sure. But what about yours?
So my aunt used to make this really wonderful. Nasi impit ketupat is really big in our family. We're not lemang people very much. So pulut tak sangat. But my aunt used to make this kuah kacang, and in the kuah kacang she used to put like really thinly sliced marinated meat. So she's since passed, and I can't.
She has passed.
Yeah,
Sorry
she's
to hear
passed.
that.
So no one wrote down the recipe.
Oh no.
And I want to recreate it this year. Maybe try and find a way to make that again, and then write the recipe down so we have it forever for posterity.
Maybe it's a question for ChatGPT.
It is. How do you make kuah kacang with daging, right?
Welcome back to Lebaran Awani. For those who just tuned in, I'm Hafiz. With me is Melisa, Idris. We're still continuing the conversation on the eve of Raya Aidilfitri, and now with our guest on set is the well-known Eddin Khoo. He's prominent culture for his work in culture. He's also a senior fellow at ISIS Malaysia, and he's also the founder of Pusaka Cultural Centre. Thanks so much, Eddin, for spending your Raya Eve with
actually,
us.
Eddin wears many hats, right? So you have like background in arts and culture and Islamic history,
Islamic philosophy.
Islamic philosophy.
I tell you, Eddin, you've got quite a bit of.
I'm sure I missed a few with that introduction.
His Wikipedia page must be very long.
I haven't created one yet.
Well, thank you so much for spending
Thank
Malam
you for
Raya
having
with
me.
us.
Thank you for having me.
Is Raya special? Because you are from mixed heritage.
Yes.
Mum is Indian, dad is Chinese.
Yes.
So how does Raya fit in with
The whole
your kind
thing.
of identity?
Oh, it was very big at one time because I was brought up by a Malay woman who stayed with us in our house and her family. She was my nanny. Or in those days we called Ibu Pesan. It's a very beautiful idea among the Malays of
Ibu Pesan.
Ibu Lahir and Ibu Pesan. The mother who bears you, and then the mother you actually call, who is normally the woman who looks after you. So she and her 3 children stayed in our house, lived with us, and I was literally brought up by her. So Raya was a very big thing because we had lemang and chicken rendang.
Oh, so this is Team Lebak.
Yeah, and then my 3 siblings, would all be dressed in full Raya garb, and
Oh, that's lovely.
So it's not something that is terasing or...
Not at all. And of course, ever since I got so immersed in Malay culture. I wish I could actually go back to Kelantan. 30 years working in Kelantan. I've never been there for Hari Raya.
Okay.
Because kesesakan lah, that is
I heard it's a different spectacle over
it's
there.
a different kind of world altogether.
Yes.
Yes, it's very, very animated, and literally the villages light up.
Okay.
Literally.
So now you spend your Rayas in KL enjoying the traffic
The
free
KL quiet, yes.
the traffic free city, I assume.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Is that how you'll be spending Raya this year?
Yeah, I'm very attuned to religious or spiritual festivals of any kind. And these days I tend to spend them in a very meditative way. Every single one of them. Yeah.
Wow.
Every single one.
That's really quite nice. The theme for, I would say, this year's AWANI, Lebaran AWANI is Bukalah Hati.
Yeah.
And, Hafiz and I were just talking about this, how relevant this feels. Because it feels so timely. I don't know about, you, Eddin, whether you've been feeling like we are all a little bit isolated, we're all a little bit more separated, more segregated. Even though we live side by side, we don't really know what's happening with as anyone who we deem is different from us, right? Have you been feeling like that recently?
Yes, and I think it's gotten worse over the course of the pandemic.
Okay.
So apart from the sociological separateness, now there's also the kind of metaphysical separateness of people tending to isolate themselves because they've kind of grown accustomed to it. But I know what you mean. I mean, the whole idea of sharing our homes during periods of festivity is not as all-embracing as it used to be. I get that sense.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at open houses these days, even my own house, I mean, I don't really have as many relatives.
Do you do open? Will you be doing an open house this year, Hafiz? I expect an invitation.
sure to you and Eddin maybe if he's free. But I think we tend to pick and choose because of the I would say the whole inertia of from COVID coming in.
You just want
like a very close
intimate.
knit and intimate.
Yeah, of course, the soaring prices don't help.
Also,
But I used to remember Hari Raya was very special because we'd wake up in the morning, and then of course we'd have the stuff in the house with Rahma and her children. Idris.
Your ibu pesan's name
My
is?
ibu's name Rama,
okay.
yeah.
How
Idris
apt.
and the children Idris, Japun, whose name I never really knew, but we call him Japun because he had interesting eyes.
interesting eyes. That's an interesting way
It
to
was,
put it.
it was his own mother called him that.
Okay.
And then Kaka, whose name also I never knew, but the morning would start with me being chiom by my nanny and Kaka, a practice that continued. And the Malay style of chiom is amazing, right? Because you breathe in the other person. So
that's
very, very
amazing.
moving. Yes, you breathe in
I
the other person.
thought it was just my family.
No, that's Malay tradition.
What a wonderful way to describe it.
But Malay
It's
tradition is
inhaling someone.
full of these amazing metaphorical aspects to the culture, right?
Yeah.
So that would be the day started. And then we had a whole itinerary of houses we had to go to. So my mom, who was a teacher, would visit Cik Wok Kamalia's house, and Pakcik Muhammad, who was very generous with his ang pao. And Cik Wok had 3 very beautiful daughters at that time. They were in their teens. I was still a child. And then we go to Auntie Hafsa's house, where I think one of the first really pretty girls I fell in love with, Ayu. Her name was Ayu.
Also how apt.
Yeah, so we would go there. And then it was my turn of my father's. All these great professors, Professor Taib Osman, Professor Bakar Hamid, people like that, we'd go. And so by the Hari Raya was spent in all their homes, and by the time we came home, it was about 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. And
So you would actually go visiting. I really
we
love
had an
this practice.
itinerary.
I don't know when I, as a kid, stopped doing that. I used to remember as a child going around to random strangers' houses and say, "Makcik nak raya," and they would get 50 cents or
Yes.
whatever, right? So that was predominantly monetary
Yes.
motivated.
Yes.
Funds related.
that was funds related. But then, even as an adult, I don't really go around beraya dekat rumah orang, and I think that's such a shame. Do you?
I mean, even among neighbors, right? Like, I don't even know like my neighbors, right? It's a different culture altogether.
So you
Our
might-
lives are very different, I think, now.
But but for the better or for worse?
It just is.
Okay.
It
No
just is.
judgment.
Yeah, I don't think it's about greater polarization, racialization, whatever it is. I still think if you go deep into the heart of Malaysia, you'd still find real openness and warmth. I mean, I've done that for 30 years of my life, deep in kampongs and things like that, and I go with a very multiracial team, all women, who are immediately adopted as daughters by, our pachis in Kuala Selangor or Johor. So I think that spirit is still very open, but I think it's just an existential way these days.
Since we are on the subject, just before we go to
Sure,
break,
sure.
I'm just wondering, like, when you say you dive deep and there's openness, is it general openness or only to a certain type of culture or certain type of traits? Or
No, I think it's general openness. I think the spirit of the Malaysian sense of a cosmopolitan, open, accommodative culture is still very much there.
Okay.
It may not be apparent in our politics sometimes, but our politics is not everything.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what I think is
once
we
every
need to
5 years.
remember
Yeah.
on things like Ramadan. Politics is not everything and should not consume all of us.
That's a very
good
point.
quote. That's a very good quote.
that
I feel
is-
like it needs to be on a T-shirt.
I feel
or
like you
something.
need to repeat that. just so that it sinks in that politics is not everything.
It's not everything, and it should not consume us. That's, I think, the very important thing.
Maybe because we've spent the last, last year, at the end of last year, just kind of immersed in this. Will there be an election or won't there be an election? And then the campaign period, we sort of kind of wired ourselves to think politics is everything. But actually
I think
it's not.
we've been experiencing this in various degrees of intensity for 24 years since 1998.
Since 1998, okay.
Yeah.
Since the OG, since the OG reformasi.
Okay, so it's really hard to shift the
Yes,
mindset.
with increasing intensity.
Okay, I just want to ask you, when you say you go, in various pockets of the country, there's still a lot of openness. Why is it not obvious in the city? How can we make it more open? Bukalah hati, I was thinking, maybe if we just buka a little bit, right? Just a crack open of understanding someone we have othered, someone who we perceive as different race, different religion, just a little bit. I really hope that would make us more, more resilient,
Acceptable.
just a bit more.
Well, I
of
think
a
when you
society.
live in the city, and that's why I mentioned the soaring prices. Partly as a bit of satire, but it is also
But it's so true.
yeah, it is also how we increasingly in urban areas start to view our space, because every space costs, and it's either yours or mine. So this effort at this increasingly territorializing of our spaces, I think, is endangering that spirit of openness, and that's something I'm concerned about, especially when it comes from authorities. Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna come back to that, Eddie. We're gonna take a very, very quick break, but let's come back and chat to Eddin more on Lebaran Awani. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.